This is Karis Alexander with Deep Truth Media. I just want to make a point regarding my last audio where I mentioned that there's a lull in the news, that there's no real major events happening, and I wanted to make a correction in that in terms of what I'm watching, what I'm looking for, one crisis after another crisis after another crisis, and so I look for the major crises that tie in with what I'm sharing in terms of being able to make the connections to some of the overriding themes that I've been following and new things that arise out of the awareness model, that is, awareness deconstructing consciousness in real time. And a very interesting scenario this week. Several times this week I've had come home to birds trying to create a nest in my woodshed, which is right next to my cabin. And I do not want a bird's nest being created in my woodshed. But it was interesting how a bird's nest symbol, metaphor for the womb. And these two birds are creating a nest in order to what? Conceive their own offspring, I gather. And so I found it quite interesting how in real time, how the manifestation creating this nest in my woodshed. And not only once, but 3 times they have attempted. And the last time they were fairly aggressive. And so I had to move things around a bit so that they can no longer make a bird's nest in my woodshed. It just would not be a good place for them, although I would like them to experience their expression in nature and not have someone of a human form like myself come and disrupt that. But when I looked at it for the long term, it would not be conducive for them or myself. But I thought it was quite an interesting metaphor, a symbol that was really showing up for me, and I really had to look at it 3 times, because 3 times they attempted. But just the tenacity that they didn't stop after the first time. They didn't stop after the second time. And they would not have stopped after the third time had I not moved things around so that they could not continue on this path of creating this nest. But let me tell you, on the third attempt, that nest was huge. And it didn't take them as long as it took them the first and the second time. They have a consciousness of their own. They know what it is that they're doing. And they had the conviction, the belief that they could pull this off. What it mirrored to me is my conviction, the belief that I have deconstructing consciousness. My belief is strong enough in that the awareness that I am and the attention and the conviction behind what it is that I am embarking on and what you are engaging in this experiment of deconstructing consciousness. Never been done before. Fascinating. This awareness model, it is all of us in the process of deconstructing consciousness as awareness that we are reclaiming our right to the divine feminine. Each of us, and bringing into balance those aspects of the male and female within each and every one of us, allowing us to dismantle this shift of perception, dissolving this system of consciousness. So as we dissolve this system of consciousness energetically, we shift our perception. And when we shift our perception, we free ourselves from this system of consciousness. And so, yes, we have to continue to ask ourselves, why is con at the beginning of the word consciousness? Because we are conned from the very beginning into this system. It's not a coincidence that in the Bible God said to Adam and Eve, do not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That was a con. That was a con because the universal architect knew that you would eat from the tree of knowledge. So by saying don't eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, he or she knew that you would do such a thing because awareness is malleable, can be easily seduced. And so when you did what you were not to do, that is how you became captured. But it was a manipulation. It was designed to manipulate you into doing what you were not to do. Very clever. Just like the power control force are very clever in manipulating you and seducing you into their system of consciousness. So when we deconstruct consciousness in real time, we get confirmation of our manifested reality. It allows us to focus our attention as awareness. When we talk about creating a new earth, this new earth arises out of you, out of each and every one of us, because there's only one dreamer. It's you. You are the only dreamer here. And it is in your ability to dream. It is in your ability to dismantle this system of consciousness that allows you to shift your perception and create a new reality, a new earth of your own choosing. But it begins with you. It's not an external changing of the physical earth plane. It is that when you manifest the ability to experience self as awareness, that it is through you, that is through the embodiment of the totality of who you are, that what expresses through you is the new earth, is the new creation, is the new birthing. As you engage the process, you are coming to the knowing and the truth of who you are, that, as I shared in my last audio, that it may awaken or activate some of your own birth trauma. It may provide an opportunity for you to break through some of your birth trauma so that you can come to know self as awareness. And so in this posting, which is truly going to be a very profound sharing, Kefee, Kokoroko, Crooner, who died today of pre-eclampsia pregnancy. I'll just explain it to you. And I'm also going to talk to you about a myth of the West African Dogon people. The other point that I want to mention is that I've been following the solar astrology, and the reason why I haven't mentioned anything of late, is because our next planetary alignment is not until July 13th to 15th that we should be watching. However, it was very interesting. I was sharing on my Facebook page how there was a couple of announcements this week, that there were two very powerful solar flares that happened this week, and I was very suspicious about that. And then I also read in ABC News had an article online that stated that the 13th of June might be a big solar flare day, and we should watch for our communication systems. So I knew when I put those two together that propaganda. You gotta watch these things. Power control force, it's their system. The title of this sharing is the Nigerian singer Kefee dies of pre-eclampsia pregnancy, which equals placenta, and the link to the West African Dogon creation myth. This is just another connecting narrative to the womb of the mother and the placenta, which is manifested in connection to the missing Nigerian girls as we deconstruct the system of consciousness as awareness. There is no coincidence that I am able to see the connections at the level of the womb of the mother as we deconstruct consciousness. I am on the trajectory of this womb of the mother concept in the dismantling this system of consciousness and the connections I am now able to make at this higher level through the media. It's no coincidences. I'm just shifting my perception as awareness so that I can see at a whole nother level the deception that we are immersed in, that the power control force, those that presume to run this world, do not. Many of you may be second guessing me and saying, well, Karis, how do you know this is the truth of what is the underlying pattern? Because I'm going to give you some examples. I'm going to show you some examples that I'm able to do that. Pretty much out here as a lone wolf, deconstructing consciousness with some of you coming on board. It's never been done before. I don't know anyone who's deconstructing consciousness at this level. And when you're a lone wolf doing something that is so pioneering and on the fringe, most people won't believe you because it's not in the mainstream consensus reality of this system of consciousness, which everyone believes is so real And that, well, why would the power control force lie to us? They have to lie to you in order to stay in power and control. So it turns out that the Nigerian singer Kefee, whose music career started at age 8 in her church choir, was famous for her gospel songs Branama and Kokoroko, who reportedly pregnant fell into a coma 15 days ago while on flight to Chicago, where she was working. The plane was forced to make an emergency landing and she was rushed to the ICU of a hospital in Los Angeles. Sources close to the family confirmed to Nigerian media that the Kokoroko Crooner has died on the morning of June 13th, 2014. So this is the real connection that I see with those false flag solar flare activity, and this being June 13th, full moon as well, and the number 13 involved. So this was some type of ritual of sort for sure. Anyway, she went into a coma after collapsing on a 14-hour flight on her way to Chicago for an event about 2 weeks ago. A close family source revealed she was diagnosed of having pre-eclampsia pregnancy, which induced high blood pressure. Well, I was like, well, what's pre-eclampsia? So I looked it up on Wikipedia, and lo and behold, pre-eclampsia is associated with multiple maternal and fetal adverse effects. But get this, when I looked up the word, this is what I found, and I'm not surprised. The cause and pathogenesis of pre-eclampsia has yet to be definitively uncovered. Through the syndrome is almost certainly the result of multiple factors. It is now thought that abnormal placentation, development and arrangement of the placenta. How about that? Ha ha ha! I couldn't believe it when I saw this. And placental function is a strong predisposing factor of pre-eclampsia. Get that? Though there are a host of contributing and related factors that complicate finding a precise mechanism for pre-eclampsia. Talk about manifesting an opportunity to really show all of you how the power control force are disguising this underlying rhythmic pattern of the fetal drama through the media, and the connection to the placenta through the media. It's not coincidence. This is all by design that I'm finding this information at this particular time, because this whole idea of the Gaian mythos is going to be very profound this year. The resurgence of the Gaian mythos, this interest in humanity reflecting on this myth and how energetically it will trigger some of their memory. It's no surprise that I would find this rhythmic pattern out, attribute it to our real-time experience of deconstructing consciousness. So it's a glorious time to be alive. It is truly a glorious time to be here as we bear witness and experience the dismantling of this system of consciousness. When I visited Mali in the winter of 2005, as I walked through the towns and villages, the signs of the creation myth were inscribed on rocks on the ground and in caves and on gourds. As it turns out, for the Dogon, this creation myth and the stories of the origin has always been a part of the daily culture of the West African people. And so the first signs of creation are those which were inscribed on these rocks in the ground and in caves, in the remembrance of this creation myth. It's all over the place. And so it turns out that for the Dogon, that the first signs of creation were those of the placenta. Imagine that. On which were marked signs denoting seeds of being. The Dogon defined two pairs of twins, the antecedents of men and women, inscripted on the landscape as reminders of the power and meaning of the land to the ancient people of on the land. A symbol of significance to the Dogon understanding creation is the placenta. They believe every human placenta to be the replica of the placenta of the womb of Amma, the supreme being or consciousness who conceived the universe. And I'm going to show you here a picture of the placenta so you can see it, because this is an image you must truly come to understand and learn about, as I will be sharing more of this in the future. According to various stories, the egg within which primordial events occurred was divided into a double placenta, each part of the placenta containing a pair of twins. Each twin was made up of both male and female principles, with one principle more dominant than the other. This is very similar to what I discussed in a previous post, an article about the dynamic playing out in our universe of consciousness with male proton and the female electron energetic force. This is about 2 sharings ago in the awareness model. According to the Dogon creation myth, the male principle forced his way out of the egg. He hurtled through space, clutching a torn fragment of the placenta that became the earth. Imagine that. So in their creation myth, part of the placenta is what became the earth itself, the womb of the mother, with a predominantly male soul, whereby creating imbalance and impurity. The male principle copulated with the earth, that is, with his own maternal placenta, but failed to make humans. So Amma, or the Supreme Being, or the universe of consciousness, sent the other twin down to procreate humans, and are a result of this incestuous coupling of what? Conception. So there is no coincidence with Kefee's death and the connection to the placenta and this narrative manifestation, which is occurring in real time as we deconstruct the system of consciousness. That is, when you know what to look for, it makes things much easier. It is interesting that when you understand the underlying rhythmic pattern, that is the origin of the fetal drama, which the power control force copy as faithfully as possible, and at the same time must remind us as little as possible of the primal trauma connected to it. That is the pumping of the polluted blood to the placenta, its processing by the placenta, and the return of fresh new blood are such vital processes for fetal life that they become the physical prototypes for the later infantile mental mechanism of projection and introjection, whereby the baby fantasizes the mother as a toilet for its uncomfortable feelings. A placental cleanser is what the mother becomes, and so the baby is allowed to process the baby's emotions and return them in less dangerous form. The nurturant placenta therefore slowly becomes the earliest object of fetal mental life, and the regular interruptions in this vital relationship produces the earliest feelings of anxiety in the fetus, which is a result of a poisonous container. It is one of the most basic principles of psychoanalysis that massive quantities of stimulation, particularly intensely painful experiences, result in severe trauma for an individual, particularly when the ego is too immature to prevent itself from being overwhelmed by effects. The fact that the fetal distress is traumatic can hardly be doubted, as the fetus has yet none of the psychological defense mechanisms to handle massive anxiety and rage, which is why we can see that the imprinted fetal drama is the matrix into which is poured all later childhood experiences as a child works over the basic questions posed by the experiences in the womb. Those questions are, and I'm sure you ask these questions of yourself too, is the world hopelessly divided between nurturant and poisonous objects? Am I eternally helpless and dependent on the life-giving blood of others? Must all good feelings be interrupted by painful ones? Am I to be eternally helpless and dependent on the life-giving blood of others? And finally, do I always have to battle for every pleasure? Will I have the support and room I need to grow? Very interesting questions. These are all questions that we have asked ourselves. These are imprinted. These are part of the fetal imprint based on our birth trauma. And these are the underlying questions that the power control force have you continuously asking yourself in this system of consciousness as they continue to traumatize you over and over again through their system. Now, this pattern of the fetus experiencing a nurturant and poisonous placenta has manifested itself as today many children are used as a toilet for adult projections. Yes, they are. It was for 1800 years that adults were in general agreement that the newborn children were full of the stains of pollution, of sin, where the child is loved and hated, rewarded and punished, bad and loving, all at once, which puts the child in a double bind of conflicting signals, which came from the adult who's striving to demonstrate that the child is both very bad, projection, reaction, and very loving, reversal, reaction. It is the child's function that the adults felt to reduce the pressing anxieties. Therefore, the child acts as an adult defense. And today, many children are poison containers for their parents, or toilets, as I like to say. Now, for their parents. Now, if adults project all their own unacceptable feelings into a child, it is obvious that severe measures must be taken to keep this dangerous toilet child under control once swallowing bands are outgrown. So this stuff, in terms of children being used as and the abuse of children, has been going back since the time of antiquity. And it is only when we look at the psychohistory of humanity, that is, when we can look at the manifestation of child rearing over the centuries, that we come to a deeper understanding of the psychology of humanity at this different stages of child rearing. And in my next couple of posts, I will be talking about the devastating examples, which I will show all the way back to antiquity, of how children were used and abused in this physical world system. It's quite alarming. It allows us to understand how a lot of these rituals, the manifestation of the atrocities that are perpetrated on children, are still playing out in this physical world as they have been since antiquity. Can you identify in your own life how you may use others, or how others may use you as a toilet for their projections? We can look to the fetal drama as to why this dynamic occurs, as we relate and use our children and each other as toilets for our own repressed anxieties, fears, and repressed infantile needs. It is this rhythmic pattern of the fetal drama that the power control force use and disguise through their womb of consciousness, and use the body of humanity as a toilet in order to project their fear, unhappiness, anger, paranoia, and perversion and insanity through the system of consciousness. And we, in turn, use our children and one another as scapegoats to relieve any personal internal conflict, which has proved an extremely effective way to maintain our own collective psychological homeostasis. So ultimately, of course, the ending of using children and each other as a toilet for repressed feelings, like the ending of wars and depressions and revolutions, each adult has experienced enough love as awareness, not the love that we experience in this physical world dimension. It is a love beyond this physical realm. And as awareness, by working through our own trauma of birth and the infantile need to return to the mother's womb, to make the use of children and each other as a toilet unnecessary. So that's the goal. When we can come to the point of knowing the truth of who we are as awareness, and we do that regressional work, and we truly understand and embrace the trauma of birth that we've all experienced and the underlying infantile needs that we trying to get met through our sexual urge to merge with the mother, through our fantasy relationships, through another person, will sever this need to use children and each other as toilet, because that's what we're doing. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in. If you'd like to join me on Facebook, my name is Kerrace, Kerrace Alexander. It truly is a glorious time to be alive. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope I was able to make some very definitive connections here, and I will so endeavor to do so in the future as I continue to share and as we continue on this journey of deconstructing the system of consciousness as awareness. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.